Years where it's going to be good, we have to have a commitment that we're going to go down there and put some money back.
Let's have a savings account.
Exactly. Instead of robbing the old trust fund and asking the citizens, can we do that?
And not having,
let's put some money back.
And no mechanism in what they pass to pay it back.
Right.
Okay. So with the proration, which is going to hit, and I've been reading, the headlines around the state for different school districts, is that they're really getting hit heavier than they expected to get from the state proration.
I don't know why, since our legislature didn't pass a budget that could fund education for 3 months. That's absurd.
There are some certain thought processes where they want to hide the fact that they weren't aware of this. But we kind of all knew.
There are a lot of inefficiencies in school districts throughout.
Right.
The Huntsville City School District has got a lot of issues. We're closing down schools, we're consolidating. Okay, so I think that when you get hit by proration locally, you have to look at doing what the government, the state government's doing. They're freezing raises. Okay, they're not going to hire anybody new. They're going to draw down their employees by just attrition. Okay, and many of them are freezing some of their capital projects.
Right.
Okay, and it's just what Mary said. Why are we sticking our neck out at this time when we don't have the revenue stream? And it appears that the recession, unless there's a real turnaround, this is going to hit our revenue stream for at least a good year or two.
Now, Paul, you brought up the new bill that's being presented next week. And that will help education if we can go that direction. And I think that's.
And you've got school-age kids.
It's specifically, tailored to the Education Trust Fund.
And it looked like his bill was going to look at a 4 to 6% natural growth in the economy.
Yeah, there's
keep it at that level.
Over his 15-year estimate, it's averaging about 4.5 to 6.4% roughly, and it kind of takes a rolling estimate as the economy expands. Those numbers will change a little bit because it takes such a broad base of years into effect. My problem with some of these issues is it really seems like the legislators last year didn't do what they're constitutionally mandated to do, which is provide the citizens of Alabama a balanced budget. And for them to put it off until the very end of the session and then have to go into a special session to provide the citizens of our state a balanced budget is really not the leadership that I'm looking for. It's not the kind of leader that I want to be. I really think they should, when they get in the session, this should be the first thing that they address. They're mandated to provide the citizens of the state with a constitutional budget, so our families and our kids know that they're going to be able to go to school and understand, what lies ahead of them. And what happened last year was they just wanted to kind of send it downstream. They overshot the budget.
Well, they ducked and ran. They ducked and ran.
That's the key. They're passing the buck.
They are.
What we had is a situation where they did not want to make the tough decisions and stand up to AEA. Right. They did not want to stand up to the entrenched interests in Montgomery. So what they did was they knew that proration would come. They passed a budget that was unrealistic, knowing that proration would come, and said, well, we'll let the governor deal with it at a later date. He'll take the blame. We don't want to go home and tell our constituents. We don't want to cut the budgets. And so essentially what they did was they passed the buck and they made the governor do a proration that was much heftier than had to actually happen. If they had passed a realistic budget, the school districts and universities would have started spending, but spending at a level that was reasonable. Right. So that the governor wouldn't come in and say, hey, wait a minute, you're spending so fast, we're going to have to do steeper proration just to cut back from what you've already spent. And so essentially what they did was they put it on the governor. And I think we need legislators who are people of conviction, who are people who say this is the right thing to do. I'm not polling, I'm not concerned about what the ramifications are. It's the right thing to do, and I know that in time, when the truth comes out, people will see that I stood on the side of right. And we need some people who are good Christians, who are conservative, and who are willing to stand on those principles in good times and in bad. And you're going to take some heat for it at times, but I think in the long run, the people can respect someone
You know,
like
and
that.
this brings us to the subject of what Arthur Orr and Mike Ball are introducing, you know, the legislation that they're introducing. We talked about this beforehand about integrity in government.
Right.
I mean, we ought to open up and talk about this too, because this is such an important issue. I mean, look, I think of transparency, you know, from my military days, and everything being transparent and open is normal. It's normal. You know, what we have in Montgomery is not normal, and I don't think some of our legislators realize that that is not a normal environment. Government being transparent and government being honest and your legislators being honest should be the norm. It shouldn't be something that you should go, wow, we've got an honest legislator. Wow, he's an honest senator. She's an honest senator. I mean, that should not be something that we really say wow about. I don't have that sense. I have the sense that we have a lot of our legislators are willing to pass the buck.
So I also think that forums like this can help hold our legislators' feet to the fire.
Well, they don't have the accountability that a lot of people are looking for, and that's probably where if you have a constitutional convention and you can restructure the government, because as we all know, it's a very weak legislative-driven government. You know,
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's probably a differing point on several of us here.
I think that you hit on a very important point, and I think we should bring it out. The Mike Ball, Arthur Orr legislation that they have been doing promotes transparency. And I think that's the key to holding people accountable, is when you know what they're actually doing. Mike Ball, Arthur Orr's legislation says something simple. Pack-to-pack transfers. You've got to eliminate that. You've got to be able to show who are the underlying contributors of these resources. When they do a pack-to-pack transfer, it's from one political action committee to a candidate, or from one political action committee to another political action committee to a candidate, and it obfuscates who's the actual underlying contributor. And that, I think, is something that prevents us from actually knowing who are the people who are funding government, who are the people who are backing these causes. Why is it that the Democrats seem to have such a hold on the education budget? I think we need to look at these pack-to-pack contributions, because they're concealing who the donors are to many of these causes, especially these Democratic causes that, you know, Paul Hubbard has got the legislature really on lockdown because of these type of backroom kind of pack-to-pack contributions.
Right.
And we need some transparency in government to see what's going on.